covers are locked up and the hell is closed. This is a question I have to ask, and then where does sin originate from? Doesn't it originate from the whispers of the Shaitaan? And there are some people who commit sins during Ramadan, so I understand this part.
So,
one more question now.
Sure. So very quickly, this is a very good question, and it deserves a whole lecture on its own. This is a very important part of the sermon of the Holy Prophet, where he says that the Shaitaan are locked up and the gates of hell are closed. Then it makes us wonder, where do sins come from? And maybe for some of us, it can become a tough shock if we want to say it bluntly. But I will say it bluntly because maybe that's what we need sometimes. The sins do not, all of them, come from the Shaitaan. The Shaitaan, in fact, can do nothing. He can do only one thing. The one thing that he can do is to whisper, if we want to use the Quranic terminology. The Shaitaan can only whisper to us things that either distract us or decorate to us things that are ugly. It decorates them into something that is, in that moment, looks beautiful. That's how the Quran describes it. So when we first think about doing the dhanb, there might be a whisper from the Shaitaan. The second dhanb, the second sin, the third sin, the 10th sin, the 1000th sin. The Shaitaan in the riwayat and the narrations, we are told, he no longer really needs to work on us anymore. Which makes us think, exactly like you asked, what happens if the Shaitaan disappears? Will I stop doing the sin? Can I blame the Shaitaan entirely for the sin? Or is there something else going on? And so ilm al-akhlaq, ethics, and moral philosophy in Islam and ethics, we basically are told that a part of us becomes like a Shaitaan. As we keep getting used to performing a sin, that becomes part of us. We no longer need the Shaitaan to whisper anything anymore. And that's why they say the Shaitaan comes to each person through one door. There are some of us that we have a level of, let's call it asma, infallibility. That stuff is where the Shaitaan has to really work on us, and sometimes he doesn't even work on us. Let's say some of us work as a cashier in a store. I'm sure that for most of you, it's not that you have to fight yourself from stealing money. The idea of stealing money from the cash never crosses your mind, ever. So to a certain extent, it is as though you already have a certain level of asma from that. But there are other things that you actually think about. And then there are other things that you not only think about, but you may actually do sometimes. And there are other things that you may actually do all the time. The things that you do all the time, the Shaitaan will never come and try to encourage you to do it more. You're on your own. You're doing great to him already on those things. Our opportunity in this month is to realize this, is to realize that the Shaitaan is not there. So when we have these, what we may consider whispers, these whispers are ourselves. And when we want to do something, this is ourself telling us to do it, and we should be in complete control of ourselves, at least during those 30 days. And this, I'll come to you, and I know you have a second question. And this should be hope for us. One of the things that they teach you in akhlaq and ethics, they tell you never look at 2 days or 10 days or a month or a year. Look at 1 day. Can you go 1 day without performing the sin? You can? It means you can do it your whole life. You just have to repeat that the next day, you just have to repeat that day. If you can do it for 30 days, because there is no Shaitaan, can you really not do it for the rest of the year? Can you not do it for the next day or month or year? So this is the hope opportunity that comes with Shahr Ramadan. But we have to be aware of it. So I don't know which question to take. I know you had a second one, and I know there's one.
It's the critics. Maybe Sayid, you told us the devil is locked up, but maybe we can blame Muawiyah. Maybe he's the one making a sin after your lecture.
I'll just say one thing. I mean, I understand where it's coming
We are
from.
the devil ourselves.
There's a frustration that the more we dig into history and we discover these things, the more frustration we have of how things happen. But there's also, I think, a part of it that we have to realize where our individual and collective responsibility is. When we look at history carefully, we see that the Imams could have done things very differently. They could have forced certain outcomes. But the point of the Imams or the point of the Prophets is not the outcome. The outcome is irrelevant. Whether he wins or loses a battle is irrelevant. The point is there's an evolution, there's a perfection, there's a walk, a spiritual path that you're walking towards God. And this only comes through a struggle. There's an individual struggle and there's a social, collective struggle that has to take place. The Imam can force the bay'ah, can do things to make people realize, of course, he's the only Imam. But then he's doing the work for the Ummah. And there's no evolution, there's no perfection, there's no growth. So it's easy to lay the blame somewhere else instead of ourselves. The same thing we can say for Imam al-Mahdi Ajjallah Faraja. We had a chat about it a few weeks ago, the month of Shaitaan. We have to bear that responsibility. We have to understand that the Imam is waiting for us. We are not waiting for the Imam. The Imam is ready. He has been ready since he was born. We're the ones who are not ready. We haven't created that kind of environment. We don't understand. We don't have the social maturity to accept this when it happens. We're like the army of Imam al Hasan if the Imam would show up today. And nothing would be done and everything would be lost. Sorry, yes? Maybe there aren't others.
And that's why I'm asking if anyone go.
Okay, my other question is earlier when you were speaking about when Imam al Hasan alayhi salam was ready to engage in war with Muawiyah, he says that in terms of him making the peace treaty, that he was in fear that maybe he'll get killed or maybe Imam al Hasan will get killed. Why would they be in fear? Because my understanding was that since they're, masoom, they're ready to die in the way of Allah, and any death they face will be the way of Allah. Why would they be in fear? Where would this be?
Yeah, so again, good question, and I think I just didn't finish that sentence. So of course, the fear of the Imams is never for themselves. And we know this, and when we look at the way the Imam handled his own death, we know that it's very normal for him. He's waiting for this, or Imam Ali alayhi salam, who as we will hear tonight, he says, Fustu wa Rabbul Ka'bah. By the Lord of the Kaaba, I have won. When he is dying. Who else says that? It's only the Ma'soom who say that. They walk to death. The companions of Imam al Hasan, who are not Ma'soom, who are not infallible, who are not of that rank, the Imam says about them that they are more happy with death than a child in the breast of their mother. These are normal people who just happen to be the followers of Imam al Hasan. So what about the Imams themselves? What about the Prophets themselves? What I meant to say, or what I should have said, is that the Imam fears the disappearance of religion. And he actually explains that in his sermons when his own companions came, and they were very unhappy when they heard that the Imam actually made a peace treaty with Muawiyah. And some of these were very loyal, faithful companions to the Imam, but they still were in so much shock. They've been fighting Muawiyah for so long with Imam Ali alayhi salam, and now with Imam al Hasan they were ready to go. But the Imam told them, and then what? We need to keep, in one of the sermons he tells them, I am doing this to keep the voice of religion, so that a voice would remain to this religion. لِيَبْقَى لِهَذَا الدِّينِ نَاعِيًا. In Arabic he said, so that a voice, someone who calls on to this religion remains. If the few people who are left on earth who represent the spirit of Islam go in this battle against Muawiyah, then what? What we have is a superficial religion represented by Muawiyah. Muawiyah all along, until that moment, all along he's been saying that he is as Muslim as they are. He is only doing everything he's doing to seek revenge for the blood of Uthman. And he had prayers, and he had pulpits, and he had mosques, and he had legal scholars, and he had narration scholars, and he had reciters of the Quran, and he had all of that. So in appearance, superficially, there is a religion. The Imam was trying, his mission was to decide between keeping this superficial victory going, doing a war for this superficial victory, to establish mosques and minarets and external forms of prayer and worship and ritual, or keep the spirit of religion going. And the spirit of religion is not but by the people who carry that religion, and they were very few at that time. We have in one narration when they came to the Imam and they told him, we want to fight Muawiyah, he told him, if I had 1,000, I would have risen. And then he says, nay, if I had 200, I would have risen. And then he says, no, if I had 50, I would have risen. And he says, if I had 7, I would have risen. So the Imam is basically saying he doesn't have 7 of those types of companions that Imam Ali had or that the Holy Prophet had to be able to rise against Muawiyah. So if they were so few, can he really risk it all, knowing that at a material level, materialistically, militarily, there is no comparison. They will all die. It's not about them. It's about, and this religion will be wiped out of the face of the earth.
Sayid.
So I have a question. A lot of time I like to think humans naturally move towards the good because it resonates with them on a deeper human level. And so when someone calls to justice, love, generosity, wisdom, it will be easier to garner understanding and support and commitment. But then when you look at the story of the Ma'sumin when it comes towards Muawiyah and the rest of history, it seems like the evil is always garners greater commitment and a following. So then I always ask myself, are humans predisposed towards good or evil? When I think of myself, I think good. But then when I look at history, I have to say evil. And so my question is to you is, where do you think we lie in this?
Again, very huge, deep topic.
2 in a minute.
2 minutes.
Because it's.
Can
I
you
know it's
explain
late.
the question more because I'm trying to understand the question.
Do you understand what I'm
Yes,
saying?
so in
He'll
summary,
explain.
in summary, do human beings lean towards good or evil? Because when you look at history, it looks like evil is always with higher numbers and maybe even winning most of the time at the end. The short answer, and again, this is a very big topic. If we want to look at it from a Quranic point of view, there's a verse in the Quran that says, O you who have believed, why is it that every time, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ma lakum, when you are told, infiru fi sabilillah, so either walk or run or move in the path of God, you become heavy towards the earth, towards the ground. ما لكم إذا قيل لكم انفروا في سبيل الله إذ ثاقلتم إلى الأرض. Literally, it says you become heavy towards the ground. It's as though the verse is saying there's two things, almost a dual reality to human beings. And the Quran, again and again, there are many instances of this. On one side, the Quran emphasizes the materialistic aspect of the creation of the human. So he says you're created from mud, clay, water, dirt, sand, in different verses. And in other areas, other verses, he says, I have created with my hand. When he tells Iblis, why did you not prostrate to that which I have created with my hand? Or in another verse, he says, and I have blown into it from my spirit. Okay? Or another verse, he says, when he describes the nafs, he says, when he says the nafs enters the body of the baby, the embryo, which is after 4 months in Surah Al-Mu'minun, it says we have created the human being, and then it describes the 6, 7, 8 steps, and then at the end it says that the soul enters, so he becomes a human being. So basically the soul enters, This is when he says, فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. This is when, it's not, the material is a miraculous creation. But then there's a layer more, which is, and then the soul enters. The human being is made up of two realities. There's a light reality, a reality that comes from the divine, and that is the one that leans towards the good. And then we have our animal reality, which is created from the earth and leans towards the earth. And it's meant for a reason. It's not only meant for a test. The test is part of it. But the faculties, the material faculties that we have been given, they're all there for a reason. If we use them in the way we're supposed to use them, they're supposed to help us become more perfect. The prophets and the Imam all have the same faculties we do, but they use them to become more perfect, not less perfect, because they were in complete control of those faculties. Us, we do the opposite. We become distracted. The Holy Quran says there are two types of souls. In Surah Al-Shams, he swears by وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا until he says وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا, and the soul and how he created it. فَأَلْهَمَهَا, so he inspired it. فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا, its corruption and its piety or religiousness. It knows. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ, truly fortunate or victorious or successful is the one who has purified it. وَقَدْ خَابَ, and he has truly lost, the one who has buried it. See, you go back to the same idea. Are you burying it? Are you digging a hole and putting the soul in it so that you no longer see the good and you live the animal life, which is the majority of people? Which is what the Quran says. The majority of people live the life that they see, and they do not know what's going on. يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا, all they know is the external reality of life. In Surah Al-Rum and Surah Al-Dukhan, when it talks about these verses, it says people know the external reality of life only, and they think that's all there is. So if you're not one of those people who actually wants to dig in a little bit more, who wants to control your impulses and your faculties a little bit more, of course, your animal aspect, and we all know this, day in, day out, everything we see and hear and think about encourages us to go back to the animal aspect of our lives. The other one requires work, requires struggle. And that's why the verses will say about those who reach heaven, they're rare. They are truly the successful ones. Why? Because it's rare. Not everybody will finish the race in that condition. I don't know if I answered.
And if what I understood is majority of people are bad.
No. Okay, so then let me say
But I said I think it's easier, good resonates us more, it's more natural to us. But unfortunately, let's do that.
So I'm going to use
It's more natural, but let's do it.
That was used by some of the Imams alayhi salam. They say that the heart is like a mirror. If you keep it dirty, so basically if you keep it directed towards material things, it stops reflecting. Reflecting what? You're supposed to be reflecting God's beauty. The reality, the fitrah, is reflecting God's beauty.
This is why Nahj al-Balagha, when the Imam says, like, the zikr of Allah is the knowledge of the hearts, by which the heart starts to see after being blind, starts to hear after being deaf, and submits after being unruly.
Exactly. The Quran says the same thing. It says, and when it talks about the hearts, in one part it says, one verse it says, is there rust on their hearts? And another one says, do not their hearts comprehend or see or hear? They are truly like beasts or animals. No, they are worse. Right? It comes back to the same idea. Human beings, the way God created them, they're supposed to lean towards good.
Naturally, that's what most of us don't do. But what's easier is this.
Yeah. So what's the role of religion?
To make it, to go back to what's more natural to us, our fitrah.
So Imam Ali in Nahj al-Balagha, he says, لِيُثِيرُوا لَهُمْ دَفَائِنَ الْعُقُولِ.
The family.
So he the role of the prophets is to excite. I'm going to use the literal words. It's a bad translation, but I want to use the literal words, so that they excite in them the parts of their reasons or the parts of the brains that they have buried.
Back to burying, back to earth.
So that's why we say, like, the more you study religion, the more you see it's all connected. It's one big canvas. Every piece is connected with the other piece.
But say it's the nature of things, right? Like if you buy something new, it's new, and then it will get dust and all of these things on it. So that's the nature of everything, not just humans, maybe.
Yeah. There's a few questions.
Well, I got a question. I just wanted to add, it's verse 30 in Surah Rum, verse 30, it says, so direct your face towards religion, including the truth. According to the filter of Allah upon which He has spread upon people who no change be in God's creation, that is, no change there be in the creation of Allah, that is the correct religion, but most people do not know it. So, my understanding of this verse is that you can't even change the nature of a human being. His nature is geared towards being towards Allah. But this whole idea of the fitra, I think it's from stuff that I've read, it's maybe like I'm canning another topic. It also means other stuff, like it could be that like when I see somebody wearing the hijab, it's my fitra telling me this is the right thing. So the point that I just wanted to make that like Muslims are bad is not perhaps accurate, but this fitra that we have, and if you go back to it, any human, like if it's a kafir or a mushrik or anyone who's even killed, it's still inside them, and you can't change that. It's just part of human nature. Like that's how God created you.
Yeah. So maybe just to add a little bit of a rational dimension to this, and absolutely, exactly like you said. They say that human beings lean towards three things. They lean towards good, they lean towards beauty, and they lean towards perfection. People who believe in God, they recognize God as being the absolute of those things. And in fact, those things are kind of diminutive versions of attributes of God. Perfection, good, and beauty. Everything a human being leans towards this life, it's because it falls under one of these categories. It either increases perfection, or one form of good or another, and beauty. Everything that we do. People who are, we're going to call them misguided, people who do not have religion or prophets to tell them, and this is what beauty means, and this is how you approach it, and this is what you do with it, of course they're going to say, and this is beauty, and this is beauty, and this is perfection, and my perfection is in listening to music, and his perfection is in stealing, and that person's perfection is in, because I'm getting better. They create their own definitions of those things. So this is where there is a fitra, there is a hard wiring in all of us to lean towards the same things, but then we misidentify what those things are supposed to be.
But doesn't this fitra also mean that like if, like you know, there are a lot of places that they want to try to prove God using like I don't know these philosophical approaches, but this fitra should also just gear me towards this one God.
Yes.
I haven't heard of this thing that you talked about with like perfection and stuff. Like this is kind of new to me. But where does this actually come? It's like, how do you get these definitions of like this correlation between?
So what do you say to someone who tells you that I do not believe in God? So where's my fitra? I don't believe in God. There is no God.
Well, I mean, there are different things where you can argue that something that's been in a human being since the beginning of time and it's still there, and people are looking for it. Like even people who are atheists are looking for some metaphysical meaning to their life. That's because they have this gear in their body when they're in their creation that they have to go towards it. It's just they're misguiding it, like they're just taking the wrong route.
Then we're saying the same things.
I just want to thank the Sayid first and thank everyone who participated. I have to stop the formal gathering,
Yes.
but we will stay open till support. So we'll continue an informal gathering. So if anyone wants to go outside a bit and come back, the other people want to continue the discussion, feel free. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.